Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, this is the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. Today's date is Monday, March 21st, 2022. We have 4 bills on our agenda today. All of them will be layover bills. We'll lay them over. The first bill is Senator Koran at Senate File 3356. Senator Koran, you're coming here so often, we might consider you as a new member soon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You are speaking to the person who actually did go to HHS voluntarily. So there is hope later. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's good training. It doesn't quite bring you up to the full potential of the judiciary.
It still has training wheels on it, Mr. Chair. So when I take them off, I'll be ready for judiciary. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to present Senate File 3356. And what this bill is really, I guess one of the reasons I came to the legislature is about transparency and accountability at every level. And one of the key things that we hear all the time is around general elections, and constituents constantly want to know, what do we know about judges? And when, in light of the law enforcement challenges we have, the safety and security challenges we have, this bill really goes and kind of targets one of those key areas of missing information. But it's really about, what are the judges, what do we know about judges? And they're on the ballot every November, but they have no idea what that means and who they are. In light of the recent stories about what kinds of sentences judges are handing down to violent or repeat offenders, in the legislature, we need to come up with ways that constituents can easily follow. What are their rules? You as a candidate, you are tracked everywhere in relationship to your voting status, the types of bills you introduce, and the outcomes. There's no such thing that exists in the judiciary system. What this bill does is really creates for the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission, which is one of the entities that collects most data about criminal sentencing, with the judicial branch itself being the other, to put together a website the public may use to do their own research about judges and what kind of decisions they make in criminal sentencing. For the information in this bill, it's already being collected, as judges already have to provide certain information as they're sentencing criminals and criminal defendants that are convicted, but it's not easily accessible by public and in any kind of meaningful way right now. I also serve as the chair of the Legislative Audit Commission, and when you think about the activities, the greatest and largest growing demand because of lack of transparency and accountability is public data requests. Simple requests which are already covered in statute that aren't adhered to. What this bill does is really kind of targets those areas and makes sure that citizens have full access to good information prior to making a decision on a ballot come every November. Right now, if the public wants to know any of the information what a judge is doing, they literally have to go down to the courthouse, spend hours or days trying to find the information, decipher all of it. And in the case of the judge, what they've done in the activity of over 6 years of their duty or their term, truly figure out what kind of judge they are, what kind of person they are, and do they earn their vote in the next election cycle. One of the ways we can assist our constituents is get the information that they're looking for, is to allow them to more easily search the data that is public and understand whether the judge has stayed sentences or the disposition of all of their sentencing, and to make sure they're constitutional and make sure that they're enforcing the aspect of law that we need to make sure our citizens live in a safe environment. In this bill, the public could be able to search by judge and find out how often the judge gives probation instead of prison time, stays of sentences, departures, every aspect of their sentencing, which is information is contained and we have, it's just not easily available, and or whether prosecutors have agreed with the judge's decision. There's a fiscal note, and I think you have that. The fiscal note comes back with about initial cost of $265,000 for fiscal year 23, $289 and 24, and then in the ongoing operational years, it's about $87,000 to maintain it. This money would be well spent, provide great transparency to the judicial branch and the people who elect judges and pay their salaries through the tax dollars, get better understanding of this important decision and its impact on society in their role. This bill doesn't limit any judge's ability to make any decisions or change their decision-making capabilities. It just makes sure that the information is available to the public so they can make intelligent, smart decisions on the November ballot. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Koran. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak for or against this bill? Seeing none, we'll open it up for discussion or questions. Senator Lance.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for walking in a few minutes late, so I didn't hear the opening remarks. I'd like to blame Senators Ingebrigtsen and Anderson for delaying me on the way over from the Capitol, but I can't blame them. I left as late as they apparently did. But I was trying to figure out the purpose of this bill, and I'm sure Senator Koran already covered that, but this information is already accessible through all public records in every county, because every case that there's a sentencing in says exactly, what happens in the sentence. So I'm trying to understand what the purpose is of moving all of this data from across the state into the Sentencing Guidelines Commission. Is the Guidelines Commission asking for this because they feel that they don't have enough data right now to be able to give comprehensive information to the legislature? Or is this an accountability thing for the judges for elections? Because, we've got a tough on crime message that's coming out around here. We want to make sure judges aren't being too lenient. So if we figure out the accessibility of the data on a statewide basis, it's more easily accessible for political opponents. I mean, where is this coming from?
Mr. Chair?
Senator Koran.
Thank you, Senator Latz. Yes, and I did cover those questions in the first part of the presentation. It really is about transparency and accountability. We see throughout the entire state today, many of these elements are covered by our Data Practices Act, and FOIA requests at the federal level, as far as information that's publicly available and can be requested. In so many cases statewide, those aren't being adhered to or being provided to citizens making general requests. This one is very specific in an element that's key to people who are on our ballot. In every other case, the voting history or the operational effect or impact of that person you're electing has an easy record to translate. They can look up your bill records, easily publicly available on any website. Every bill that you write, you sign, sponsor, vote on. The same equivalent doesn't exist in the judiciary side of a key important election or ballot question. And so this does consolidate that information. Technically, yes, is readily available, but can take hours and days of a citizen's time to sit down there and discover those. So it's not easily and readily available. You want informed decisions in voters on November when these judges are up for re-election, and that's what this bill does accomplish.
Senator Lance.
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator, you just said that sounded like, if I understood what you said, is that some people are having difficulty getting this information because they have to go through some kind of public data requests and they're not being granted the access to the data that they are asking for. Did I hear you correctly? And if so, can you give us some examples?
Mr. Chair, ease of accessibility and time. Yes, as you described, Senator Latz, that you could go down to the county and dig through all those records if you choose. It could take days, could take hours, could take days in a term of a 6-year term of a judge today. Those things are just not readily accessible in ease of use. Everything else we do on that ballot, somebody has an easy ability to go onto a consolidated website like your record and my record and to be able to determine how well you perform and does it meet within their viewpoints to make sure they make an informed decision on their ballot in November.
So, Mr. Chairman, I haven't tried to do this kind of a records request, but I suspect that one could just submit a simple records request to the Judiciary or to the county, and I wouldn't have to go through and search all of it myself anyway. I'd get the data back in response to the data request, I would expect. But the second part of my question wasn't answered. Actually, I don't even know. I know that you can do a database search right now online by judge's name, because I've done that, in my own private practice. So that much at least is available. I'm not sure what the broader parameter is in that regard. But I still haven't heard an answer to the question is there a case, a situation that you've identified where it's been a problem? Someone has been requested data and they've been denied access to it.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Koran.
Senator Latz, From the specific case perspective, I hear all the time about, I don't know anything about the judges and it's difficult to find it. The average citizen, you and I, and those that are activists in a community, those things are readily available. If you have enough time and you have enough money to be able to get those requests, and typically a printing fee or some type of access fee is required. This really just brings it to the forefront and makes sure it's easy, it's understandable, and all the data is in a consolidated location.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess the answer is we don't have any specific example in which data has been requested and denied, information has been requested and denied. Senator Koran is hearing this all the time from his constituents or from someone that they're trying to get judge data and they can't get it easily. So, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily have a problem with having data readily, I don't have a problem with having data readily accessible, but sometimes I think we need to be careful, or we need to be aware anyway. We have anecdotes, we legislate by anecdote all the time up here. We have people come in and testify. I tried to get this information, I had to wait 6 weeks, and the information I got cost me too much money or whatever the deal was. And here we've got sort of a general statement without any data to back it up. So that's what I'm trying to get a sense of what's motivating this effort here. I would say it is consistent with the approach that the majority has taken in this committee, attacking judges for being too lenient, supposedly, and prosecutors for being too lenient in sentencing. We've heard that as a recurring theme in this committee. And this sounds like another way to attack that exact same line of messaging, which to me is electioneering. So I guess I'm questioning whether or not we're really doing this because of the merits or because it's part of a bigger messaging from the majority to set us up in the fall. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sir
Mr. Chair.
Kiffmeyer.
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of the things that I see about this is the fact that regular citizens get to vote, and they vote on election judges. We have elected judges in our state, and so we want them to be informed and to know what they are voting for, and so what this does. And I know that sometimes those who might be in a system where they know how to manage the data, or in a system that they know where to ask the question or how to ask the question. And for those of us who are, say, sitting on a Judiciary Committee, might have a lot of knowledge, or maybe in our private life, we have an occupation that makes it easier for us to get that information and to know where to ask and how to do that. But Mr. Chair, that is not true necessarily for regular citizens. But those are the folks who still yet have a say in, and they want to have information so that they can make an informed decision about what they're doing. I mean, all of our Senate members here at this committee table, we put out information where we stand on the issues. We have searchable databases for us that people can take a look at and how we voted and all this stuff. We're just simply saying, why do we make it so difficult for a regular citizen to get this information? It's not that easy, and I think that transparency, that accountability, I think is a very good positive thing for it, and may even really help many of these judges to demonstrate the quality of their work. I don't think we should be afraid of that, and that might be the answer. So thank you, Senator Koran, for bringing the bill forward.
Senator Koran.
thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Latz, my goal has been consistent since I've arrived. It's about government accountability and transparency. Serving as the chair of the Legislative Audit Commission, one in where we've invested additional resources because one of their fastest growing requests is government's failure to meet data practice requests that are currently covered by statute. And those are globally, and they cover a variety of agencies. It's also, in working with the administrative law judge, their fastest single growing request is, again, because of lack of agencies following through on basic data practices requests. And so you'll see my bill composition, my effort that we work on the Legislative Audit Commission to follow this very same line on important agencies and data acquisition for citizens who vote on people on our ballots. We need to make sure it's transparent and accessible to bring the accountability that they need and the information so they can make an informed choice in December, or I'm sorry, in November on the election.
Senator Bingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I have a question for Senator Koran, Mr. Chair, is your intention to lay this bill over for possible inclusion?
Yes, Senator Bingham, I made an announcement when we first started. I don't know if you were in the room. All of our bills today will be laid over.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, this is public information already, so I don't think that's the discussion, but there is a database called MinSys, and that is the Minnesota Court Information System. Unless somebody corrects me if I'm wrong, I believe that's what the acronym stands for. And in that is the sentencing information of any case that has received a sentence. So this information is already available in a public database on the Minnesota Courts page. So my question to Senator Koran is, are you looking then just to do like a separate database with just the sentencing stuff? Or, I mean, you know, the MinSys has like when the next appearance is, it has all the, you know, information about the various charges and different stuff like that. So I guess I'm just wanting some clarification on that. So if Senator Koran would be willing to answer.
Perhaps counsel might be able to answer that question for you. Counsel is suggesting no, he can't.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Koran.
It is to attempt to do exactly what Senator Bingham has talked about, is a subset of the information. A wide variety of information is available, but to be able to decipher in a logical manner that the average citizen can, one, have access to, read and understand the disposition of each decision that the judges make. That's what it boils down to. When you look at the elements of data that are contained in a wide variety of sources, this does consolidate it into that to make it easy to understand, specifically for judicial actions for a judge in their disposition of all sentencing.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Senator Bingham.
Thank you. There literally is a disposition tab on the MinSys framework on the web page. So it is readily available, and you can search by either defendant or judge. And I mean, Mr. Chair, a question for you is, have you received any additional information about your committee target?
No,
All right, Mr. Chair, because
not
this
at
is.
this time.
Okay. Well, I hope we get that information soon for you. And again, I'm going to reiterate, I hope it's a large target, because this bill is $265,000, and then there's some ongoing. And I'll be honest, like, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I would think, because the information's already there, and I mean, if you think the public needs it in that specific of a website where it's already in one under disposition and MinSys that we already have, do you think that's a good investment? I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. Information's already out there. I would just think that there's money better well spent in bills that actually have already been heard here. And I have a couple, Mr. Chair, that I could bring forward because we already have this. But overall, I mean, this is the direction the committee wants to go. That's cool. But it's already out there, and it's already MinSys under the disposition tab. And so just thinking from a fiscal perspective that you probably have some other bills you've heard that the money might be better well spent on.
You know, my observation is every election year, within a couple days of the election day or when people are starting to vote, they give me a call and they always ask, who should we vote for judge? And I don't even know the answer to that question. And
I do, you can refer them over to me.
I'll keep that in mind. And not a single constituent has said, how do I get a hold of that MinSys data program? not a single one has asked that either. And so I think what Senator Koran is trying to do in this bill is to consolidate information that's already collected in a rather large data system. And he's reduced it down to, 14 tabs, fields, so that the citizens have a little bit easier way of doing their own research.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, real quick.
Senator Bigham.
You know, that's fine. Again, that's not the problem, but, you know, you've mentioned elections, Senator Kiffmeyer's mentioned elections. If this is a voter's guide for judges, then it belongs in Senator Kiffmeyer's committee, not in yours. So, I mean, the fact is that this information is already there. Again, fine, if we want to put it in a specific website, that's great. I just think that fiscally, there's probably better things that this committee, which we've already heard, bills we've already heard, that this money could be used for.
One thing that the committee should know is that the third branch of government is not subject to our data privacy laws. So that would be something that we should consider. Now, granted, public decisions are, and somewhere they're tabulated in this huge MinSys program, but nevertheless, you know, I'm one who is very adverse toward learning new technology. I finally figured out how to turn on certain programs in my cell phone, and yet at the same time, my kids are quantum leaps beyond me. But nevertheless, if I looked at a MinSys program, I'm sure my eyes would glaze up and my hands would start trembling, and I would just be overwhelmed by that program.
Actually, quite easy to use, Mr. Chair.
But nevertheless, some people don't want ease of gaining information on public officials. So is there any further discussion? Senator Latz.
Mr. Chairman, looks like the total fiscal impact over the course of the development here, it looks like closer to 600,000 or more, 265 in 23, 289 in 24, 87 in 25. I think that's what we're looking at. So it's well over $500,000. And so I guess it'd be worth finding out either from the judicial branch or the Guidelines Commission how accessible they think the data already is in some location, and whether it's necessary to incur this expenditure before you consider using up that much money within whatever target you get for a new computer program.
Well, there's
Maybe they're
always,
here, I don't know if they want to say anything about it.
yeah, Senator Latz, there's always a cost to everything we do.
Well, our decision is whether it's worth it.
Yep. If I can get melodramatic, Thomas Jefferson talked about the price of freedom being eternal vigilance. So, but he didn't have a computer program either. So, any further discussion? Hearing none, this bill will be laid over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and
Senator
committee.
Graham. Next on our list is Senator Mathews. Senate File 3752. Senator Kiffmeyer, you'll be next. You're on deck. Senator Mathews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have Senate File 3752, and it is a bill for recordings of committee meetings of the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines. And for the past couple of years, the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission has been meeting remotely or in a hybrid fashion because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And during this time, they've made their meetings available online so the public could participate or watch the meetings back after the fact. As all levels of government are returning to a more normal phase, this helps us evaluate what this should look like moving forward. And one of the advantages we've all discovered in the last couple of years is the increased use of technology to allow the public to follow what we are doing. So this will help make greater sunshine in government and broader participation by those who have not been able to take time off to visit in person in the past. Of particular concern with the Sentencing Guidelines Commission is that they have made some proposals that are controversial or sweeping in the past few years, and sometimes have had great opposition presented to them by the public. One of these recent changes was postponed, hopefully permanently, but at least postponed because of great public outcry. And so this bill is an effort to make sure that these meetings are not taken offline in the future and making it harder for the public to follow what they're doing. The bill simply makes this use of technology permanent and requires them to record their meetings and make them permanently available to the public. The fiscal note indicates that the sentencing guidelines is already doing this, and an estimated fiscal cost of $4,000 for camera and recording equipment. So that's a general overview of the bill, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to turn it over to our testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Mathews. We have one person on our list of testifiers, Judge Michelle Larkin.
You too, thank you.
Welcome to the committee. If you could pull that microphone closer,
How's that?
and if you could, perfect, if you could introduce yourself and then please proceed.
My name is Michelle Larkin. I'm a judge on the Minnesota Court of Appeals. I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here as a commissioner on the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission. I'm here to speak in favor of Senate File 3752. I don't know that this is a controversial proposal, but I think it's important that you hear from someone on the commission about what meetings have been like now that we've been using remote technology to enable people to participate, specifically the public, remotely. I think this bill is important for three reasons: transparency, accessibility, and accountability. As we've heard, the Sentencing Guidelines Commission is subject to the open meeting law requirement, so our hearings are open to the public, and we have a public comment period at the end of each meeting. Through the use of remote technology and remote meetings and hybrid meetings and posting our meetings online, we see, I think, increased public awareness and participation in the work of the Sentencing Guidelines Commission. When the option of recording and posting the meetings online was presented to the commission, I believe there was a unanimous vote that that was the right thing to do in the interest of transparency. Now, as we know, we, like everybody else, are trying to figure out what the future looks like, and it's possible that we will no longer do hybrid meetings. And I've talked with the executive director who's here today, and he assures me that even if we end hybrid meetings, there would be a way to continue to record and post the meetings online, so at least members of the public can watch them afterwards. That, I think, is the very least we should do. I think if we have to end hybrid meetings, that would be a great disservice to the public. Through the use of these hybrid meetings, the public has been able to watch the commission, the debates, online in real time. The public has been able to offer comments at the end of the meetings, all without the time and expense and intimidation of traveling to St. Paul to do so. For example, we had a public hearing in December on a proposal to modify our treatment of custody status points when calculating criminal history scores, which impact sentencing. 29 members of the public testified, both in support and opposition to that proposal, and of those 29, 18 testified remotely. We were able to hear from people we might not otherwise heard of, and that's something I think we see every month. For example, after our meeting last month, at the end in the public comment section, a woman asked to comment, and it turned out she was a grandmother whose grandson had been killed in a crime, and she talked about what that was like for her family and how devastating that has been for her daughter. And we don't often enough in the commission get to hear stories like that. Since we've had these public or remote proceedings, and since especially the proposal to change how we calculate sentences in December, it can't be understated how much public awareness of what the Sentencing Guidelines Commission is, the type of work it does, and the power it has been increased dramatically. There are significant sentencing reforms under consideration, and given what we read in the paper every day about crime and sentencing, it's no surprise that the public continues to be very interested in this work that the Sentencing Guidelines does, which perhaps until, the past year or two, it was completely unaware of. So I would just suggest that now is not the time to restrict public access to our work. If all we can do to continue that access is to post hearings online after they've occurred, so be it. But I think the better consideration would be to consider some sort of hybrid format. I know that the bill as written doesn't do that, but I think at the very least, we need to post these hearings online. The last thing I'd mention is accountability. The members of the Sentencing Guidelines Commission, as you know, are not elected. They're appointed. Those that are appointed to represent stakeholder groups, I think, are pretty accessible to the people they represent. For example, the law enforcement, probation officers, county attorney, public defenders, the judges. Now, we have public members of the commission, but I don't know that their, public information, their cell phone, their email, their residence is available. I don't know that they're as accessible. So it helps that the public can come directly to the commission at these meetings and speak to what is the commission's primary responsibility, which is public safety. And I think the public has shown a willingness to step up and do that, and I'd encourage the group to do whatever it can to make that as easy as possible for members of the public. That's all I have.
Thank you, Judge. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak for or against this bill? Would you introduce yourself?
Mr.
And
Chairman,
then
members of the
proceed.
committee, my name is Rich Neumeister. The testifier previously was already suggested something, and which I'm going to make the same suggestion. Put in a little sentence on line 110 and something to this effect. The commission must have a real-time hybrid access to its meetings for the public. And Mr. Chairman, why I say that is that, yes, many public bodies are reevaluating themselves how to approach the public with things they've learned. It's been all the way from the extreme by some government associations. Let's go virtual all the time so we don't have to meet in person. All the way to where maybe something like this, like the City of St. Paul public body said, you know what? It was kind of neat that we are able to, in real time, get input from the community, but still be physically at our place. So as these committees come up for these kinds of discussion, I think that would be an appropriate amendment to this piece of legislation as it moves through the process. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that is my point on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neumeister. We'll open it up for committee discussion. Mayor Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First to the testifier, Your Honor, thank you for your service on the commission. I will refrain from asking your opinion on the functionality of MNCES at the moment. But Senator Mathews, this is a great bill, and I appreciate you bringing it forward. I think this is very important. We do this, now in our legislative body, and I think it's very appropriate for transparency. The Sentencing Guideline Commission does such important work, and I think it's a good tool for them to use for public transparency and for the process. So I hope if you get a target, Mr. Chair, larger than $5,000, hey, we've seen worse in this committee for your target, that this is included in it, because I think it's good for public transparency and participation. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other members? Senator Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'd like to have comments from the author with regards to Mr. Neumeister's suggestion.
Mr. Chair and Senator Ingebrigtsen,
Senator Mathews.
I understand we're going to lay the bill over, but I'm very open to that concept, very willing to look into whether that makes sense. And up to you, Mr. Chair, if you want to lay it over as is and we discuss that later. But generally, yes, I'm favorable to the ideas that testifiers presented.
Senator Mathews, that may affect your fiscal note a little bit. I don't know how you can get some new information under that consideration, but maybe you could talk to Mr. Turner about that before we have another meeting. I think it's important for the public to realize that Sentencing Guidelines Commission is rather unique. It not only gives advice to the legislature, but it does have the power to affect criminal sentences that are already written in our state statute. If they depart from that, it's up to the legislature to repeal that decision. And it's even more poignant that they are appointed. 8 of the 11 are appointed by the executive branch, and it somewhat removes the influence of the legislature from decision-making in state statute. That's vitally important to realize that that decision is no longer in the hands of the representational branch, the voice of the public in governing decisions. It's done by the executive branch, which administrates the public policies written into our state statute. That's vitally important for the public to realize. And so having this type of a visual and audio recording of each meeting, and even with the idea of having it in a real-time format, is very important at this time. So any other further discussion, Senator Latz?
Mr. Chairman, I support this bill. I also support live streaming the meetings as they're occurring for the public to be able to see what's happening, just like those who are tuning in today can see what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I would simply note that the legislature delegated by its own acts years ago, delegated the authority to the Sentencing Guidelines Commission to have the power to make the decisions that they make, and then reserve for ourselves the ability through our own legislative process to change that outcome if we reach consensus to do so.
Yeah. Senator Latz, that's a good point. About 40 years ago, a legislature at that time made that decision. I'm not sure if they completely visualized the effect of what that commission can do. But nevertheless, it's important for us to revisit it from time to time. And thank you for that comment. Senator Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious, I like what Mr. Neumeister had to say. I'm just wondering if Mr. Turner would have an idea of what it would cost to have that amendment put on regarding his request.
Mr. Turner.
Mr. Chair and Senator Anderson, I wouldn't have a clue at this point, but I will try and find out as soon as possible.
Senator Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there anybody in the audience that could give us some?
We have a brave soul waving at us, so Mr. Reitz, welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would you identify yourself and then
Certainly.
proceed?
My name is Nate Reitz. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission. I believe the amendment would essentially eliminate the fiscal cost because essentially it would require us to do what we are now doing in perpetuity. And what we are now doing, essentially, there's no extra cost to creating a video. As long as YouTube is free, there's no extra cost to creating a video on WebEx. We just press record, and then we upload the video after the meeting to the YouTube site, which is what the bill essentially requires. The cost that was based on the assumption that someday we will go back to the way things were, where we wouldn't have our meetings on WebEx, so we wouldn't be able to just press record and have a meeting that we could post on YouTube. So we'd have to bring in some new technology to record the meetings as they were occurring. But if meetings are to forever be hybrid, there would be no cost to continuing to do what we're now doing.
Director, Does it cost anything to broadcast the meeting? You put your comments in context of recording, but broadcasting, is there a cost to that?
Before COVID, Mr. Chair, we had a subscription to WebEx for training. So, and really that's all we used WebEx for was training. So we've simply converted, we still use it for training, but now the primary use of our WebEx subscription is to show meetings to both the public. So we have, the WebEx address is publicized before the meetings, and so members of the public can join the meeting via the WebEx link, and they hear everything that's going on. Members of the commission can also join the meeting via a WebEx panelist link, so they can hear what's going on and participate. And at one point during the meeting, we unmute all the microphones, and members of the public can, at that point, make public comments during the public comment time. So we've actually had more public participation than we used to have when meetings were only in person. We pretty much eliminated in-person public participation, but total public participation has gone way up because lots of people, more people now tune in than used to come in person.
Right, thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none. Senator Mathews, it looks like you have some new work to do.
Yes,
You
Mr. Chair.
have a lot of interest in
Be
the
happy to do
committee on your
so.
bill. We will lay over Senate File 3752. Thank you. Moving right along, Senator Kiffmeyer. Members, you might remember that Senator Kiffmeyer's bill was on our last agenda, and we had some lively discussion, and we had to move her bill on to Monday's agenda. So you finally made it, Senator. Senate File 3332, Senator Kiffmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So the bill is very straightforward. It includes additional funding to the Minnesota County Attorneys Association to use for prosecutorial and law enforcement training, including trial school training and train the trainer courses. So to give more detail, Mr. Chair, I think it's best if our testifier from the actual county attorney would address the issues that are inspiring the language of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome to the committee. Would you identify yourself for the record and then proceed with your testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Kristen Nelson. I'm the Mower County Attorney. I am also the co-chair of the Education Committee for the Minnesota County Attorneys Association. First, I want to thank Senator Kiffmeyer for her support and for all of the co-authors of this bill. Training is vital to our profession. I think, as you all see daily here, the law is not static. We have to keep moving forward, and our training has to keep moving forward. We've had some challenges in the last few years. Training new attorneys during COVID is hard. When I learned how to be an attorney, somebody would simply take you to court with them. You'd sit down, you'd learn what to do. That doesn't work so much on Zoom. You can't whisper into somebody's ear over Zoom and teach them what they should be saying. So we have a big need for training. One of the things we would like to do with this training money is right now we have a trial school, which is a peer-led, intensive, one-on-one training where other county attorneys teach our younger county attorneys how to do their job and to do it well. Right now, we can only do that once a year, which is a very limited amount of seats for that school. I myself could probably fill up a third of the trial school, and I'm in a small county with a fairly small office, but we have new people that need that training. Getting this additional funds would allow us to do this trial school more often. It would allow us to get our prosecutors more trial prepared. It would allow us to give more information on issues that are, I want to say, upcoming or are here, such as phone dumps, such as all the electronic information our attorneys are now getting in for trials. How to weed through that, how to present that. Additionally, we, like much of society, are facing a change in demographics. We are losing, through retirements, a lot of our trainers, our longtime county attorneys who are going to retire, and we need to get some new blood in our training system. So another thing we need to do with these funds is to have some train-the-trainer classes so that we can keep our education ongoing for the next generation of prosecutors that are out there. We are cognizant of spending public funds, so we try to use our own people for our trainings. That lets us keep the cost low. It lets us keep below market rates for our members so that small counties who have the same needs when it comes to a trial as a big county can get the same training, and we can be on the same level to provide public safety for all of our members. So I thank you for your consideration on this.
Thank you. Any questions for our testifier? Hearing none. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against this bill? Hearing no further discussion, we will lay over Senate File 3332. Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer, and your guest. We'll now move on to number 4 on our agenda, Senate File 3150, Senator Johnson. Senator Johnson, Senate File 3150.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to start off with a bit of a concept here that all persons before conviction shall be bailable by sufficient sureties, except for capital offenses. This is a statement out of the Minnesota Bill of Rights. Guarantees that right of bail for certain people. And also the federal Constitution has a similar article in it. But this does not mean that we cannot impose conditions of those bails in the legislature. This bill that we have before us today, 3150, is a relatively simple bill. We are not telling judges that they may not seek release for people, but if a judge does release someone without imposition of bail, they may only do so with electric monitoring for a specific list of violent crimes. And if you turn to the bill and you look, it's patronizingly clear, the titles here, of the different violent crimes that are listed. And I think you can go through that and read for yourself the different headings that this covers. But again, this is simply a bill that says if you are released for one of these violent crimes without bail, that you will be electronically monitored. We have a number of examples of individuals who during this time being released without bail have committed follow-up crimes. We had a lot of testimony last year. One in particular was a fellow who stepped out of work and was severely beaten after a fellow who was released without bail decided to take it out on him and is still suffering the consequence of that. So, Mr. Chair, the bill is quite simple. It simply does, it allows for further tracking of individuals who are released without bail. With that, Mr. Chair, take questions.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against this bill? Please come up to the table.
I think Carly wants to praise it for a little bit here.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Ms. Stark, would you identify yourself for the committee and then proceed?
Yes, hello, my name is Carly Stark. I am a policy analyst with the Association of Minnesota Counties. I'm also the executive director of the Minnesota Association of Community Corrections Act Counties. So they do probation. We have some concerns about this bill related mostly to the costs of EHM and how that will impact county costs in the public safety area. The majority of criminal cases that are heard in court are eligible for a public defender, meaning that clients are below a poverty threshold. So if we look at the federal poverty guidelines, 125% is $16,988 a month. In one county, electronic home monitoring costs $30 per day, which is approximately $900 per month. So if you take that poverty guideline and subtract the EHM, that leaves approximately $500 a month. So effectively, many people, though they may be released without bail, they won't be able to afford the electronic home monitoring. The effect of that on county budgets is that if they can't afford the electronic home monitoring and they also can't afford the bail, because there's such a large list of offenses, it means that people will be staying in county jails longer, which will exponentially increase the cost to the county and to the county sheriff, thereby taking those funds away from other important things that the sheriff's office does, like going on patrols. The other issue is that when someone is on electronic home monitoring, there's an assumption that they are being supervised vigilantly, but if there's no pretrial in a certain county, they are put on this EHM system, and then usually law enforcement will get a notification that they have left a perimeter around their house. Not every EHM software tracks that person, so law enforcement then knows they're not where they're supposed to be, but they don't know how to go get them because the GPS hasn't tracked them. And if you get the technology with the GPS tracking, it's even more expensive. So we have these concerns and hope to work with Senator Johnson to figure out if there is a way to alleviate those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stark. I have a question right off the bat, and that is, if a person now is released without bail, how does anyone continue supervision of that individual if there's no monitor and there's no bail and they're released?
That's a good question. So the way it works differs from county to county. In some counties, they have pretrial supervision in which a probation officer will make sure that they get to court and don't commit new crimes. So if they hear that they had contact with law enforcement, they will call and they will say, hey, what's going on? Or they'll send a warrant for that person to be picked up for violating a court condition. There are a lot of counties where they don't have pretrial supervision, because that is one of those things that is not funded by the state. So if counties can't afford it, they don't have it. If the condition is just to not have any more, not to commit new crimes, the only way that they are found is if they do commit a new crime. Otherwise, they aren't supervised. If they are drug testing, they often just go to the sheriff's office or the police station. And so then the sheriff would report to the court if they miss their test or if they test positive.
All right, thank you. Any discussion, questions, Senator Kiffmeyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I'm just hearing all of the expenses that you're talking about in regards to that, it seems as though when I read the list of these offenses that are here, so this isn't just for lower level offenses, these are very serious offenses. And so I look at this and think how important it would be then to consider bail in these situations and not use a more expensive form of electronic home monitoring. But I mean, these are assaults, these are violence, kidnapping, murder, sexual extortion, arson in the first degree, harassment, restraining order, just use of minors in sexual performance prohibited. These are really serious things. Certain persons not to possess firearms, domestic abuse, no contact order, that bail would be by far less expensive for the court or the sheriff or the process than doing what you have talked about. Would you agree with that? Yes, to the witness, to the testifier.
Yes, in some cases, it all depends on who the person is, what their offense is. A lot of times, some of the things listed are misdemeanors, so the legislature decided that they can only be punishable by 30 days in jail or less. So going on EHM during the pending case would likely be more expensive than keeping them in jail for that 30 days. There's all kinds of different factors, so that's why I'm talking more to the cost, not to exactly what the offenses are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think the testifier took a lot of my concerns. Thank you, Ms. Stark, for mentioning those. I think the intention, I think, is well, but what this will end up being is an unfunded mandate, and therefore it's just a shift to property taxes via the county. And it's just putting a lot of pressure on our community correction folks and sheriff folks that are already short-staffed. And so I think the fiscal impact of this proposal would have to really, really be fleshed out. And again, just kind of going, not knowing when or how much your target is going to be. I guess I would like to know if we're going to do this, we'd probably need a local impact note as well on it, just to know exactly what it would be. But I have a feeling it's going to be a substantial shift to property taxes on this.
Thank you, Senator Latz.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm reading through the bill, and it looks like it was just kind of I'm not sure where the list of proposals that came in here, the crimes that this would be covered by, if it was just grabbed from one of the many parts of our statute that have a list of what are considered violent crimes, or if it was the list that was put together with individual consideration in each case. But like Senator Kiffmeyer noted, there are a number of what are inherently very violent crimes in here, which it would absolutely shock me if a judge released someone, set a conditional release, which included some or no bail, other than, say, a max bail unconditional, without some other kind of a safety component in there, like electronic monitoring. I don't think anyone's going to get charged with first-degree murder, have $1 million bail set, and then the alternative is you don't have to post any bail unless you're, just a no bail required, come back on your own recognizance, that's it. That would be stunning to me if that were to happen. So in that sense, and for many of these, I think that would be the case, this bill would be kind of redundant. On the other end of the spectrum, well, maybe I should set this up by saying in many cases, there's a unconditional bail set, which is required by the Constitution. Everyone has the option except in capital cases. And we don't have capital punishment in Minnesota, so it's not an issue. The judge is required by the Constitution to set a bail amount, a dollar amount to post without any other conditions. The other end of the spectrum is no bail required. Here's your court date, come back when you're scheduled to return. If you don't, we can take you back into custody. Put a warrant out for your arrest. But that's the other end of the spectrum. And then there's the in-between, where sometimes the judge will set a lower bail that's not unconditional, say a $6,000 bail plus electronic monitoring or no use or abstinence or random testing. And there are a variety of different ways to do that. Some counties are set up with remote alcohol monitoring. I think some prefer to do random testing with a color wheel, and you call in, every day or every other day, and you find out if your color's up, and if it is, you got to go in and test. But on the far end of the spectrum, the opposite end that Senator Kiffmeyer mentioned, there are the crimes listed here that it seems to me would make absolutely no sense to require electronic monitoring. For example, the first one listed on line 1.21 is Section 169A.20, driving while impaired. So that encompasses a wide range of conduct. Right now, under current law, any high test, meaning .16 or higher, which is a gross misdemeanor, or any repeat offense, at least within the last 10 years, which is a gross misdemeanor, or third-degree DWI, or more serious level offenses, are already by statute mandated if they are released on any conditions. They have to include remote electronic alcohol monitoring, not just electronic monitoring to figure out their location. So what this would do in terms of changing the law, it would say anyone who got tested on a first offense on a .08 alcohol concentration, who may have been stopped for an equipment violation, to get released, they would have to be released on electronic monitoring of some sort if this bill were to become law. And the last numbers I saw, there's somewhere north of 20,000 DWIs in Minnesota a year. Most of those, maybe 60% or so, are first-time offenses, low tests, misdemeanor level offenses. So you're talking an awful lot of people that this would apply to, that frankly, their driving conduct itself, I'm not talking cases where there were crashes or injuries necessarily, but they're low tests. Electronic monitoring might not be the right thing to require in those kind of cases. In any case, I would, prosecutor always has a right to ask for it, I suppose, and a judge can make a decision if the conduct was particularly egregious and they thought they needed that. If we look at item number 3 on line 2.1, order for protection violation, that's a really, really broad category. That could mean going and assaulting the person who is the protected party in order for protection violation. But a violation, well, an order for protection would cover the following conduct as well. No texts or voicemail messages. You must pay restitution. If there was, say, a criminal damage to property, maybe a toy or a door was broken or something, protected party got an OFP, and the judge included in the order for protection said you got to pay for the broken door or the broken toy. Possession of a pet. The court can order in an OFP who gets to take care of the dog or the cat. And if there's an issue regarding that, that would be a violation of the court's order, be a misdemeanor crime, and they could be arrested and charged with that misdemeanor crime. Not continuing insurance on a motor vehicle or other kind of health insurance, for example, that would be a violation. And this would also include ex parte orders, so orders that may have been issued without any input before the order was issued from the non-protected party. If we look down on fifth degree assault, line 2.12, assault fear and assault harm are both covered. Now, fifth degree is the misdemeanor level assault. The other ones here are more serious listed. But I'm just saying fifth degree assault. So if I made a menacing face intending to cause someone to be afraid that I would hurt them and they weren't, actually it doesn't even matter if they're actually afraid, just intending to cause that fear, and I get charged with assault fear, this would say I could only be released if I were on electronic monitoring. If there's a physical altercation between two non-domestic related parties, maybe there's a pushing and shoving match in a bar between two people who are intoxicated. One of them gets a bruise on their arm. The other one gets charged with assault. Again, if they're charged with that, they'd have to be released on electronic monitoring if this bill were to become law. I'm not sure that's necessarily the best use of resources. Maybe the better resource there would be release with an abstinence condition and go on a random testing. If we look to the next page, 3.17 line, harassment or stalking. Stalking sounds pretty bad, but the harassment statute also includes repeated calls or texts on a telephone. All right, so that repeated means more than one. So if there's a harassment restraining order that's issued that says you can't call someone, and the non-protected party texts someone in violation of that, then they would be have to be released on electronic monitoring. There's a requirement that you can't follow someone through technology. So the statute's a little bit ambiguous there. It might mean tracking their location, but it might also mean following their Facebook page. or following them on Instagram. Calling them on a telephone, or causing a telephone to repeatedly ring. Emailing them would be, under the statute, harassment. And that's before there's a harassment restraining order. There's also the same conditions with a harassment restraining order violation, but that might include even broader prohibitions by a judge. Indecent exposure sounds pretty bad, but it also includes someone who's intoxicated peeing in an alley behind a building. And I'm not sure that they're necessarily such a threat to the public that they need to be released on electronic monitoring. Domestic abuse, no contact order. Then we're back to the calls and texts that could trigger a violation there, or traveling somewhere within the 6-block radius that they're not supposed to be traveling within. I guess my point is, there may be some things here where it makes sense to require this, maybe not. That's one reason why we have judges and prosecutors, is to take into account the nature of the particular offense and the circumstances, whether the person has a history or doesn't have a history, and determining what conditions of release are best intended to be dealt with here. Keeping in mind the main purpose of bail and conditions of release is to secure the person's return to court to face the criminal justice charges that they're facing. A secondary purpose is to secure the public safety. These don't necessarily implicate the public safety, even though it might be considered, the way the chief author said, a list of violent crimes. So I think we probably, if this isn't to go anywhere, it ought to be fine-tuned quite a bit before it moves on to the point to becoming law, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for considering my view.
Thank you, Senator Latz. Any discussion? Senator Ingebrigtsen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions and a comment. It's just lovely to hear the hypotheticals that are brought forward in this committee, and I think of being pulled over for a taillight violation. My friend at Candioi County Sheriff's Department who did that ended up to be the biggest marijuana bust in Minnesota history back in the 90s. That's kind of interesting. That was just on a traffic violation. So to minimize those kind of things is, I can give you hypotheticals the other direction as well. San Francisco probably would think twice about peeing in an alley. Quite frankly, if they would enforce that, they wouldn't be peeing out in front of the general public in San Francisco. That's just my thoughts about that hypothetical. But anyhow, I have a question for Ms. Stark, if you would. What's your average workload of your members?
Ms. Stark?
When you talk about probationary?
Like probation caseloads?
Yes.
There isn't an average. It highly depends on which county you're in. I'd say the caseload that a lot of people shoot for is for felony cases around 40. I don't know anyone who has caseloads that low for felonies. And pretrial is a completely different thing. I don't know how caseloads work for pretrial because only some of my members are able to provide pretrial services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're very busy. I mean, there's no question about that. We hear that. And my next question would be, these devices, do they work? Do they work pretty well? Monitoring devices?
I think it depends on your definition of work. How do you mean?
Are they good monitors? Are they good trackers? Mr. Chair, thank you.
I think it depends on what you're tracking. So again, if you are wanting to know if someone, oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's all right.
If you want to know someone is in their home or within a radius of their home, then the basic tracker works great because it'll tell you when they leave that radius. If you don't have the kind that costs more money, will track your actual specific location, then it may not work for another purpose. Like if it's a law enforcement officer seeing that someone left that radius and they want to know exactly where they are, then it wouldn't work for that unless they have the more expensive kind, which would work for that. So it depends on what kind of tracking you're looking for and what device the client has.
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
So just finally, Mr. Chair, thank you. The GPS we're talking about here, tracking devices are, what you say, $30 a month, or $30 a day, $900 a month.
And that was just one example from one county that I was able to reach out to.
Okay.
Um,
But that person,
Senator Ingebrigtsen.
thank you, Mr. Chair, but that person then, of course, has been released back into the general public to be able to continue their jobs and work and not be necessarily tied up in jail. But it is rather expensive, no question about that, $900 a month, even if it's less than that, $700 a month is, so Senator Bigham talked about the expense here. Maybe this is a question to Senator Johnson. Who would generate the expense here? I mean, not generate the expense, but who would be paying for these? Would it be counties or would it be individuals?
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Ingebrigtsen. So the individuals would be responsible for the costs, however, if they're indigent, the expense would tend to fall upon the county, is my understanding of that.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, this bill too will be laid over. And that ends our agenda, and we stand adjourned. Thank you. Oh, pardon me, Senator Latt.
Thank you. Can you give us some idea of what we might expect on Friday?
We have a list. I don't know how many bills we have. It'll be posted later. We have, I think we're starting at 10 o'clock. We're hoping to be done sometime in the afternoon. I don't think we're going to go into the evening. I hope not. I don't have the exact agenda formulated right now.
Okay. I would anticipate we'll probably be out tomorrow, I suppose, to meet the 72-hour rule, right?
I would, what day? Wednesday would be the 72-hour, 3-day rule.
Wednesday to
Tuesday.
Thursday, Thursday to Friday.
I'm hearing Tuesday and Wednesday.
I mean, I know it's deadline week and things are fluid, so we should anticipate that.
We're going to do the best that we can to satisfy the 3-day rule. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for bringing it up.